Oh, here we go. And now we officially are live.
Cool.
So, welcome to October Book Chat. We have a great, as you can see, panel of authors to chat about paranormal romance. Some of our favorite stories are paranormal. So I'm really excited. I'm super excited about this group of authors. And before we get into our chat, we will start by introducing ourselves. And Carrie, I'll have you start.
Okay, I'm Carrie Nichols. I write small town and family and pets for Harlequin Special Edition. I don't write paranormal, although, you know, I have some ideas in my head. Maybe someday I'll add a little to it. I don't know.
Okay, and next, Abigail.
Yeah. Abigail Owen. I write adult paranormal romance and YA fantasy as Abigail Owen. And then I've got two other pen names. So steamy contemporary romance, cowboys and rom-coms. That's Katie Scott. And Kristen McKenna writes sweet contemporary romance, small towns, and
like
kittens.
This.
If it has an HEA, I like to write it.
Yeah.
Anne?
Me? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say Anne?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I write paranormal romance, erotic romance, and romantic suspense. Kind of started to dip my toes into that. Now I'm sort of really sticking closer to the paranormal and the romantic suspense, but I also started a thriller, so that should be interesting. I can get that one out next year. That'd be fun.
We need to chat. Yeah. Synithia.
Hey everybody, I'm Synithia Williams. I write sexy, messy, emotional romance contemporary. I write for Harlequin's HQN and Special Edition. Yep. But my Special Edition debut was me dipping my toe into paranormal elements about a group of brothers who do paranormal investigations because I love paranormal romance. And so this is me tiptoeing over aside. So excited to talk to the other paranormal authors as well.
I love that. And Madalyn?
Hi, everybody. I'm Madalyn Layne. I'm just dipping my toes into paranormal romance with my first start of the big series. I also write as Alison McLean, and that is with traditional publishing, and I write Scottish historical romances.
I love it. And I'm Lucy Monroe. And I write a little bit of everything, but definitely, yes, I write paranormal. And I have my Children of the Moon series. And this week, actually, I'm finishing up my contemporary novella. I wrote a novella years ago for Berkeley, and readers have been asking for the brother story, for like 10 years. And I woke up, I don't know, a few weeks ago with his story idea. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write his novella and get it done. And then readers will hopefully be happy. So that book will be out sometime next year. I don't know. It'll be an indie release. So let's talk paranormal romance. Let's talk our favorites. Let's talk what we like to read. And this time, let's start with Anne. Anne, what is your favorite kind of do you have a favorite book? Do you have a favorite author? Do you have a couple of favorites? We don't like to you can't talk about all 150 favorite authors you have. Right? So pick a couple, right? Just pick a couple.
I guess what really, really got me into the paranormal stuff would probably be Lorianne Donner. Her New Species series was amazing. And then I started kind of going back and picking up everything she wrote. And then also I really, really love Nalini Singh, if I'm pronouncing that right. She just has so much creativity that she puts me to complete shame. I feel like I should just hang up my pen, but I don't know how she does it. And then of course, Christine Feehan has, I've loved her for just from the very beginning. And so I have nothing but amazing things to say about that. Romance books are amazing, but paranormal books kind of puts you in a whole new world. So whatever chaos is going on in your life, once you open that book, you're literally in the Carpathian Mountains, or, it's just such a good feeling.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Christine Feehan and Sherilyn Kenyon are probably why I started writing, because I loved their stories so much. And I read all of their books. and I had to tell my own because I wanted more, you know, like,
Yeah.
and I think that's where a lot of our stories can come from, is that desire to read more of what you have read. And so you're like, oh, I'm going to tell a story, or you have a story. Like, I get a lot of dreams and I wake up from my dreams. It's like, ooh, that's the book. That's the story. So, and yes.
I'm a co-sign with you, Anne. Nalini Singh. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Guild Hunter, Side Changeling, absolute hands down my favorite series.
Yeah.
Caleb Krychek is my forever book boyfriend. No one has taken his place. Since
I love the Side Changeling. Oh my God.
Yes.
And that was always one of the series that the authors, you know, the Feehan and then Nalini Singh are two authors that I could read with my mom until her dementia hit. But so that was kind of nice for us. She's not really a big romance fan, but she did find some authors where her and I could share. And so that was kind of nice that, you know, we had that together. So
cool. That is nice. Yeah, that's she's
I
my favorite
with her as well. I started with Christine Feehan, and I can remember the first time it was the first vampire book I'd ever read. I think it was the second one in that series, and my mind was just blown. And then I got into, I really enjoy her Leopard series. That's probably my favorite one of hers right now. And Cressley Cole, her Immortals After Dark. That's always been a favorite. She's just so funny, and the characters are so lively. And again,
people keep telling me to read her books, and I haven't yet.
Yeah.
Yes, Lothair was my boyfriend before Caleb. So
who was that?
Lothair, I think that's how you pronounce it. He was my boyfriend before Caleb.
You like the dark.
I do.
That's funny.
Awesome.
My start was actually a little different. So I was reading contemporary romance, and I was reading sci-fi fantasy completely separately. I did not know that there was a mix until Twilight. And I went,
okay.
You can mix these and have both, best of both worlds. And so then I went looking for books. And strangely, when I started researching on Amazon, like just searching for anything along that lines, but more adult on Amazon, the first things that came up weren't the big name Cheryl and Kenyon's and Christine Feehan's. It was indie books, because it was like 2012 when indies really took off initially. And suddenly everything on Amazon was indie, right? And so Suzanne Wright was more indie on that at that time, and Heather Kellogg Walden. And so then it was like that got me into the snowball of what else is out there, and finding all of them. I think though it was probably Rebecca Zanetti's vampire series.
I like Rebecca Zanetti.
That really, I was like, and this is what I shall write forevermore.
I love that.
It's funny. Twilight kind of reminded me how much I like that stuff. I would watch paranormal TV shows, and then I read Twilight, and then I was like, I need vampires that are killing people. And that's when I got into the Black Dagger Brotherhood.
Yep.
And I read all of that.
Ward.
J.R. Ward. I swept through that and just kind of went from there. Yeah.
Oh, y'all. And Laura Lee, not vampires, but her breeds are so out of this world. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Emotion. If you put her book down without having an emotional breakdown, I just don't know you. I just it's like
you get those are the ones you flip through. You just read them over and over. Right? You buy a new copy because you really did.
That you're like, I don't have this imagination. I can't write this. She's one of those for me. When I read her books, I'm like, her and Christine Feehan, Cheryl Kenyon, definitely. A lot of authors, but man, Laura Lee, I remember when I first read her, it was an indie book. It was an indie title, and it was right before she went into New York publishing. And I was like, oh my gosh, my brain doesn't go with this breed. And I loved it. I love her breed book. So it's so fun to talk about what gets us into and what gets us going. I mean, there are authors that are still on my auto-buy list that I've been reading for over 2 decades now, and there are authors that have fallen off, not because I don't love them, but anybody who watches this, y'all know I get migraines from reading now. So I do most of my reading on audiobook, and I have like a small selection of books I'll actually read as an ebook. I can almost not read in print unless it's a hardback, because it has to be big enough print to not give me a migraine. And yes, I have reading glasses with prisms, but I write, y'all, and that's what uses up all It uses all of my eye strength to do my writing in a day. And so what's left over, I used to spend,
Oh yeah.
I used to read like five books a week. And
Yeah.
now I'm lucky if I can finish one. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
That's just life.
I
And
get
it's just,
that.
you know.
You know who we didn't talk about was Karen Marie Moaning.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many good authors. And Abigail, you're right. There's a lot of really good authors out there in indie publishing. And there's a gateway there. I find when you go in, like you search Amazon I didn't always used to search Amazon. Sometimes I search other places. Fiction DB used to be a really good source, right? I don't think they're even in business anymore, but man, I love them. I have over 5,000, maybe 6,000 ebooks. So a lot
of no judgment zone. You're good.
Yeah. A lot of indie writers back in the day when I could read as much as I wanted. And man, there's just some really good authors out there telling their stories. And I truly believe when you pick up a story and you read it, that when you connect to that story, you can tell if that author is writing their story or they're writing a story. There's nothing wrong with either one, but I think we get lost in their stories.
Yeah.
I think a story can be really greatly entertaining, but not. And I've written some stories that are a story, and it's not a bad thing. It's like, that's what I was in the place to write at that moment. But when I'm writing my stories, there's a different level of passion, a different level of connection between me and the characters and the setting and all of that. So, it's just, but I'm in no way denigrating either one. So please don't.
Well, sometimes you can feel that in a series, even if you're going through a paranormal series and there's like one book that you're like, oh, and then another one, you're like, yeah, that's good. I'm glad we got that story and it got us to the next one.
Right. But it was, right. You guys, the Carpathian stories, I was thinking about Dark Gold. It's still my favorite. Like, oh my gosh, I love that book. And I have reread that book probably 6 times.
I think she has like 30 plus in that series now. And she's probably
I did stop at 20, I think. I don't know.
You guys, the only one I haven't read is the one that just came out in hardback because I just haven't read it yet. But that I still love.
Now, are any of you long series writers? Like you could go 20, 30 books in a series?
No.
I don't know.
The series I'm writing right now is kind of going to turn out that way, but it wasn't intentional. I had like 5 planned and then all these other characters started popping up. I was like, so I'm thinking of breaking it into offshoots maybe.
Yeah.
When I can't do the long ones. About 5 books is about where my squirrel tendencies
are. Right?
Yeah.
Now I can do spinoffs, and that helps me keep it, I think, fresh.
That's
same world, but different, like big bad for the overarching series thing. But I can't go 20, 30 books.
Right.
When Children of the Moon, when I started it, I intended it to be just ongoing. And then when Berkeley lost interest, I thought, well, at some point I have to write that final book so readers aren't mad. But when I wrote Viking's Moon, it wasn't the end. But then what I did was I skipped ahead like 300 years to write the next book. So
in the story,
right? Because there's still the overarching enemy is still that same group of, bigots. It's kind of who they are. But it just, I would have stayed probably in the Middle Ages if I had stayed with the publisher, and I would have just stuck. And I think I probably could have written 20 books. But, part of our creative process is there's feedback, there's give and take. When your publisher says we're done, it really does a number on you.
Yep.
And I went back to that series because I had so many readers keep asking for the story.
Yeah.
And they kept but so like you go back, but it does change how you perceive it. And I am still in a flux about it because when I look at we're live, but I'm going to be just really honest here. But when you look at how much money you make on book A and book B, you have to weigh that because your livelihood is also part of the equation of being a writer. And so I absolutely am passionate about writing my story, but sometimes I have to write my story over here that I know is going to make enough money to pay the bills.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and because it's a different market. It's a different market, and I haven't found that magic.
And that was a thing as well, I think, because the paranormal that I just published, I finished that probably in 2013, and it was sort of the market was going down for paranormals. I found starting there, and you kept hearing, well, werewolves aren't selling or whatever that was, but the indie market had surged, and that's where it stayed alive. And those indie authors, especially these amazing romance authors, they're so entrepreneurial in what they've done and how they created their books, writing to market, or maybe not writing to market but writing the book of your heart, like you were talking about. And really that they've got that option to do that once the market traditionally kind of tanked.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's coming back. There was some good books this October. I read Witchful Thinking by Celeste Martin. Yes, with the witch and the merman. I was like, give me more of this. and then I'm listening to A Ghost in Shining Armor by, I think it's Teresa Harry. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but I'm enjoying that. So I'm hoping, I know it's like October, Halloween, spooky season, but I'm hoping that, maybe more will start coming because I love paranormal.
Well, and some of the huge paranormal authors that were traditionally publishing indie as well. Leslie Cole published a whole series indie. I think it was for young adults. But really, I mean, in terms of market and what they put indie versus trad, possibly, because if they're really big authors, then they might be making more trad. But
speaking of book series, have you guys ever ran across the problem where you fully intended the villain to be a villain and to be killed off? Then he gets his own book. I've never experienced that before.
I almost every series,
like that big of a series, and then one of my beta readers, she's like, "You're not going to kill him off, right? We really like him," and I'm just like, "Actually, yes, he was going to die." So then I was like, "Well, okay, maybe he's redeemable, I guess." So then I had to change the whole schedule of what I had planned. And so now his book is next. So that happened.
I find I like to give the villains a very good, solid backstory and reasons why they do what they do. And because of that, they endear themselves. And I like a good anti-hero. I really do.
Too. Yes.
In a very big way. And so between those two things, typically those villains end up being like the finale of the series because they must get their own HEA and be redeemed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just finished a mystery suspense, and I have a serial killer in it, which I couldn't help but write him as a likable guy. And so at the end, he's going to prison, and you're like sad. Guys, all these people, but he's like, he's doing it because he really cares about people.
I love that you're writing a suspense mystery. That I'm excited about that. Are you
really
publishing that one?
I think no, I want to go trad because I don't have enough experience in the indie market to indie publish. I mean, unless
really get it pushed out there.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm hoping to go trad. We can never say for sure, but I'll start. I'm going to do my final revisions on it because I went to beta readers, and now I've got the comments back, and then I'll start submitting to agents once I get those.
That's exciting.
It's really exciting, but it's the process. Y'all know the process and
that process. Yeah. Very slow.
So slow. And when readers are like, "So when's it coming?" I'm like, I have no idea.
Eventually.
Someday. Right? I got this book I wrote last year, finished it up at the beginning of this year, Masquerade in Egypt, and it's like a women's fiction historical set in the 1920s, and I really, really love it. And I haven't sold it yet. It's with different publishers, but I haven't heard anything back. And I'm like, do I indie publish? Do I keep trying to traditionally publish it? Because it's a bigger book. And so I'm like, do I want that? I would love to go with a publisher that knows what to do with women's fiction / romance, right? but yeah, it just takes a long time. Like it
Yeah.
but I wrote for 9 years before I sold my first book. And I
Mhm.
got so many rejections. So when people talk about, oh, you this, or I'm like, you just deal. You just deal. You just
Yeah.
gotta go forward. You just gotta like keep going. You can't give up. If you believe in the story, you believe in the story. And I wrote 13 books and sold that 13th book, right? Every one of the 12 books I wrote before it sold to traditional publishers. So
That's so funny.
and it's like, so it's what one editor didn't love, another editor did. And so I learned that one person's opinion truly is just one
That
person.
person's.
It's
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
so well, and it's what we already have this, we love it, we already
Yes.
have it, it's such a mixed bag when you're trying to
Mhm.
Mhm.
get
I
that.
think
And market
sometimes
will always
you
support it.
just hit it at the right time too. I
Yep.
mean,
Oh,
sometimes
timing
you're
is
hitting it at the wrong time, and then
everything. Yep.
all of a sudden they're looking for exactly what you just
Exactly.
sent them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Jay
So you got to
Hagan
keep
talked
writing
about
your
fingers
that.
story.
crossed.
Yep. Keep
So-
writing your story because you
Yes.
never know when that's
It'll
gonna
come back
be on the
around.
upswing.
It
Yeah.
really
Just
will.
Yeah.
you're like, oh, let me
Absolutely.
dust this off.
Yep.
It's ready.
Yeah.
I've been waiting.
Yeah.
Right? We just don't
That's
know.
so
We don't, timing it's so important. And also who you talk to, who where you get, where you can get it. Publishing it's a weird industry, and it's an industry that is in flux right now, and it has been in flux for over 10 years.
It really is. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes we lose sight of, I think I had so many people when I first got my first thing published with Kensington. A lot of people told me, well, you can't send a novella to a traditional publisher. They're not going to look at anything like that. And but I did.
Yeah.
And it just, like we were just talking about, it just happened to be they needed another story to go in an anthology. And
Mhm.
so she picked it up and made an offer on 2 full-length books as well.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
so then I was like excited, but also like, hold up. Never wrote a full-length book before. Signing as I'm crying,
Right.
this is a bad idea. You just don't want to lose that, you grab it when you can. So
Yeah.
and it all worked out.
Yeah, but we get to read those too. We get to read the stories other people's passion got behind. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just curious, like, what is it about paranormal, especially for the ones who write paranormal mostly? What is it about it that you love or draws you to that?
That's the world building, I would say. I mean, you're creating, the setting is so incredibly important no matter what your story is, but when you're writing a speculative fiction, you're creating that, and how is that impacting your characters, and just how big can you go? Where can your imagination go? You're restricted by the setting you build, but yet you're not restricted as you're setting it.
Go ahead.
And I do think sometimes it's fun, because I realized writing Zadoc's book is that you're so restricted on what you can do when you write a contemporary romance, or but with the paranormal stuff, you can really make your own rules, and those rules are sometimes harsh, but in the real world that would not be okay. But this is my Zenarian, so I can do this. So it's kind of fun creative wise.
I think that is really key for me. It is that I don't always like the world we live in. I find it difficult and painful to, to experience our world as it is. So I get to write a world in which my werewolves back in the Middle Ages did not see women as lesser beings, did not see people who were gay as lesser beings, I got to create a world that I wanted to live in. And I like that. And when readers read it, they get to stay in that world with me. And it's maybe a place of safety for some people, and it's a place of comfort. And it's what I love to do. I do that with all my stories, but I think paranormal most of all, because you get to completely define what the parameters of your world are. You get to say that justice happens, not just laws get enforced. You get to say that people are this way and not this way. I don't know, like it just, I love that. It's the control freak in me who's so excited to create a world.
Stakes too, when you think about a paranormal story, you've got at the end is the world, are they going to save the world and fall in love and stay in love? Whereas if you're writing in the contemporary world, obviously that's not happening. So the stakes are so high.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's the imagination. It is the only limit is where I can go with my imagination, and the escape of it. And all books are an escape for me to a certain extent, especially if they have a happily ever after and I know we're going to end happy. Like, right. This world is so that I need the happies. I need a guaranteed happy place, but to have that guaranteed happy in a world where the imagination just can fly and there could be dragons, there can be fire, and there can be wolves, and there can be all sorts of cool things. Yeah. I mean, magic. Oh, it's so good.
Oh, yes, magic.
You know what? And I love mixing that animal instinct with humanity.
Yes.
Because I think that humankind, we have a lot of human instinct, we call it, but it's the animal nature in us, right? But we don't want to identify with that, but we don't mind reading about it or seeing it exaggerated in a werewolf or a dragon shifter or, whatever. And so I think that's fun too, because we let ourselves maybe even be more human in a paranormal world than even in like a regular contemporary romance or a historical romance.
Yeah. I agree.
I will say also, as an author in paranormal, and even more so in fantasy, I would say, because that's a completely different world rather than set in our world, but with different rules, right? Nobody gets to tell me what my world is. You don't get to argue with me about my world.
And as a
back to the control freak.
But also as a reader, why do I love reading them? Right? Because I get to interpret those words the way I want to. I get to live in that imagination and that imaginary world, and I get to see things the way I want to. And say I think that one world is too harsh or whatever, I get to like gloss that in my own mind because I get to be lost in a story if I want to. And I think as a reader, that's such a gift. Like we want to have that gift given to us, that ability to just be immersed in a world that we want to be in. And, it's one of the reasons I have an auto buy list and I have a never buy again list. And it's not necessarily because authors, some of them are like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know how, like, I don't understand. But some of them are just like, some authors want to write about themes and things. I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to spend time in that world. Nothing against them. It's just not a world I want to be in. So I will just not go back there, know? And that's not a bad thing. And I would never tell y'all who it is because it doesn't matter, right? Because we each have our own worlds we don't want to live in because of our past and the things that we've experienced in life. There's some things we never want to revisit. And some people want to revisit those things to get rid of their feelings of whatever, And
on that same note, I think one of the first books I read that was like the urban fantasy romance was a Nalini Singh. I think it was the Side Changeling, maybe. Was considered urban fantasy romance. A friend of mine she turned me on to Nalini Singh, and I was like, I don't read that. I don't read that stuff. And, I liked werewolves and vampires and stuff, but I don't know what this nonsense is. And she said, I'm telling you, you just have to try the first book and see what you think. Well, then I went back to her website and devoured everything she wrote. And it's just funny that sometimes on the flip side of that, something you think you would hate can't turn out to be your favorite author. Like, I think sometimes it's good to try new things.
You're
maybe,
right. Absolutely.
You're going to hate it.
Right.
Maybe you're going to absolutely love it. So it's kind of fun thing about fantasy and romance. And, you can try all the new things and just like be completely immersed.
I love the strength in the characters too, because they may have like superhuman strength, but then usually there's something emotionally soft about them or emotionally weak, and they're overcoming that too, but they can still go out and like kill everybody, take over the world, do whatever they need to do.
They have to be vulnerable. They have to have some kind of a soft center or something. And that maybe only if it's a hero, the heroine is the only one who can pull that out of them.
But I like when the heroines are badass too. Like Going back to my
Yeah.
first boyfriend, Lothair, when he, ripped out his heart or whatever and sent it to her, and then she like chopped off her middle finger and sent it back or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I love that too. You're not going to do that in contemporary. He's going to send you flowers and you're going to go throw them on his car or something, but you're not going to chop off your middle finger and send it back in a box. Like, that you get that in paranormal that you don't necessarily get in contemporary.
Yeah.
Right? That definitely. I was going to ask you, Synithia, when you wrote, like you said, you played with the edges of paranormal by having your heroes be paranormal investigators. But that allowed you to do some things with your imagination that you wouldn't have been able to do in just a straight up contemporary romance. What else did you find about that was?
Well, number one, I believe in ghosts. I mean, not that I've had a weird ghostly encounter, but I don't know if maybe it's part of growing up in the South and, just stories and hearing things. And it allowed me to kind of play on something that I do kind of think happens, but then I can also tell a different story with it. And so in the first book, she doesn't believe in ghosts. She doesn't believe in paranormal investigation. So I get to explore the, what if this is real kind of part of it. So it, for some of my readers who are like, I don't know how this ghost and contemporary stuff you're doing is going to work together. But then when they read it, they're like, oh, I really love how you brought that together. And that's what I wanted to do, is to, it's not a ghost story, but there is, like, this it right now, and ghosts are in the world and you don't believe it. How would you feel about discovering that? How would you go about kind of understanding what that is like? So that's kind of what I did. And I was really surprised and pleased when Special Edition let me do it. Because I really wanted to tell that story. I watched those paranormal shows. I saw the show called Ghost Brothers, and I was like, these dudes need a book. So I'm glad I was able to, use my imagination, but also kind of maybe open up to people who may not have read paranormal. This is like kind of getting some of my readers into that, and then maybe they'll go into other paranormal stories.
Like a tiptoe into it.
Like the gateway.
It's not a real heavy, you don't,
But I like that because it brings the aspect, because lots of us, like, my husband and I watch every UFO special there is. Okay, we just totally do. And ghosts, I am absolutely open to the concept of, like, I just have never had a personal experience, but I'm like, I never dismiss someone else's, because it's like, so I love because that's part of real life, right? Mm-hmm. So you bring in something that is part of real life, of contemporary life, in a contemporary. I love that, because what you're doing is just basically broadening the box and saying the world that we live in is actually as big as the world that we live in.
Right.
Which I love that. It's
still a contemporary, but you get to explore this and this and if you don't believe, that's still fine. Enjoy the book, but
it's not shoved down your throat. It's like, I can believe it or not believe it.
Right. And then when you find out, why the ghost is haunting the grandmother's house, it gives you that heartwarming feeling kind of thing that you're like, oh,
question from comments. I didn't want to get too far into the discussion because, like that leg time. But Susan Wilson asked, how do you world build? So let's just kind of go around the room. And Carrie, jump in on this, because world building isn't just paranormal. Yeah. You do a ton, I know from personal experience, of world building. So let's just kind of, anybody want to just hop in with how you particularly do your world building?
I can start if you want. I don't know if this really is what what you mean, but essentially when I first started writing my Zenarians, Zadoc's book is the latest. It was, I actually didn't even write the first sentence. I actually had a powwow with my kids, my adult daughters, and we kind of just jotted down notes on what we wanted to be in the series. And, the younger generation, I think, have a much better imagination. And so we sort of hashed out these notes, and then that went from that to what do I want to see with the series? Who is going to be first? Who's going to be the last book? What is it about the Zenarians that make them different? And so I ended up with like this 12-page document of just like everything about their world and why they came here, what each book was going to be like. And I had in my mind, I had started with 5 and then that grew, and just an entire outline. And so then when I decided to write the first one, I kind of knew exactly where I wanted this series to go and what direction it was going to be. And I think that really helped me stay on track with getting each one done, is because I already knew everything about their society and why they were that way. So that was a lot of fun to actually just sit and just throw stuff on paper and have my kids come up with, oh, it'd be really cool if they did this, or, you know, so this just turned out to be like a fun little, you know, family adventure.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in?
And my daughter always wants to help me too. This is thinking specifically to my Highlander books, my medieval romances, and my covers, of course. You know, they've always got the bare-chested guy in it. And every time she would see them, she'd be like, why can't you just put a unicorn on the front? I always wanted to see, so helpful, but
That's funny.
I can go if you want. I'm similar to Anne in that I'm a plotter, and I really had built up my world before I started writing. It took me 3 months of, you know, once I got my idea, I knew I wanted to write about werewolves, but I wanted to have sort of a bigger world. And so it ended up being, it's called The Wolves of Odin is the series name. And it ended up being a mashup between Norse mythology and the werewolf myths, although they don't call them werewolves in the series. And so I started with the Norse myths, and that's where I started, was just reading them, because you have an idea, or you have a Marvel idea. I was talking about Asgard the other day, and my kids looked at me, and my son was in, you mean like the Marvel Asgard? And I'm like, the Norse Asgard, it's bigger than that. And so that's where I started with all those myths. And then as I was reading through the different myths, and there's a couple of books that were, it's been a while, the Poeticas, or the word is something like that. And poets at the time were writing down a bunch of these different myths. And so then, of course, modern day scholars were referencing those and writing about the myths. So that's where I started. And then I just started building the world, and I had a whole bunch of questions. I found something on the internet or somewhere, this was a while ago, maybe even pre-internet. And they were questions that once I started to have to answer, what's the society, what's the religion, what's the power structure, what do they have, you know, where do they live, all that kind of stuff. Once you start to answer that, then my own questions would come to me. And I just was writing in a document all the answers to my questions, and I had like a huge document at the end. It felt like a book, like it was about 30,000 words.
Oh,
I'm not kidding,
wow.
but it was just free writing. And once I had that behind me with the world building, then I could go forward and sort of create the outline of the story at that point.
Anyone else want to share how they build a world?
Sure. For world building is actually my very favorite part of books,
Me too.
of writing. And what's really funny about that is that with my first few series, which were paranormal romance series, the feedback that I got most consistently that was constructive feedback was not enough world building. And I was like, who cares what color the couch is? Like, does that really matter? Not realizing, like, it took me a while to learn that world building could be something that actually contributes to the story and the plot and like the overall feel and that, you know, all of that, as well as where everything is coming from. And so now it is my absolute favorite part of books. And so for me, it depends on if I'm writing paranormal romance versus fantasy, because I consider myself a plantser. I started as a pantser. When I started, like my first book, I wrote the scenes completely out of order with no plot and then connected them later. I don't recommend that. And now I plot a little bit and then go from there. And if my characters take it a completely different direction, then we follow where the characters go. But that tends to be how I go with plots. But with paranormal romance, because it's set in this world, I tend to world build as it's needed for the story. So I have an idea about creatures and who my characters are going to be. And I've got an overarching plot kind of arc for the entire series. But beyond that, I'm like, if I need to put world into it, it's as I go. But my fantasies, so this is the paranormal. Here we go. Dragons.
Yum.
Yes. And then the fantasies are completely different. And because it was the first time I built a world entirely from scratch. And so the way I approached that was actually from the villain. So the initial idea came from, I just started reading through a bunch of really old fairy tales. And it was a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale about a man who sheds his shadow, and the shadow becomes a real man and kills him and takes over his life. And I thought, there's my villain and my hero in the same guy, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And then took that and went, okay, what is the villain's backstory? And that fed the mythology, the world, the different, biomes, and the way the goddesses work, and the way that, everything. And so I built all of that kind of like Madalyn before I even wrote Word One. So it was a very, very different approach to it for me, for fantasy versus paranormal.
I like that. That's very interesting to me. I do some world building ahead of time. I do so much research because I love to learn.
Mhm.
And so when I was creating my Children of the Moon series, I just read dozens of books on ancient Scottish history, on ancient Scottish lore. I knew that there was a connection to the Norse. So I also researched ancient, Norse mythology, and I have some really good books on mythology, by the way, Madalyn. We should get together sometime. I don't know how, but you'd love them. But yeah, so then all those ideas sort of percolate in my head. And then when I start to write, they come out, and the bits and pieces that I want to use come out, and then I'll take notes as I go along about what I'm creating, so that at the end do I have it with me? Sorry, I keep like a notebook with all of my worlds and my characters and all.
Wow.
So that when I go to write the next book, I can refer to and I have key scenes where pivotal things are revealed about particular aspects of my world that I will print out and also put in that notebook so that I can remember.
Yeah.
That is a brilliant idea.
Good idea.
Because how do you
Don't forget you put this one random line in there that readers are going to be like, what happened to this? And you're like, oh, I forgot.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get it perfect. So I take a lot of notes post. I started off as a plotter. I wrote 12 books plotting. I sold the book I pantsed. I pantsed for 60 books after that. And then I've started plotting every once in a while since then. So it just kind of depends now, I'll have a story idea and then I'll go, but, and it's where I'm at. I love world building. Susan said something about Nora Roberts' Donovan Legacy. Is that a favorite? Do you guys read Donovan Legacy? Do you know the
I haven't
Donovan?
read that series. No.
Did you read it, Carrie?
I've read, I don't know if the Donovans that might be the one I did read. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, I think it is. Yes. They were Irish ones.
It starts in the past and then comes into the present day, I think.
Yes.
That would be some
Witches,
amazing world building. I love that.
Yeah.
You know who writes a really good witch series is Susan Stevens. She started off in Presents with me about the same time. And now she has an indie series. It's a witch series. And I think she's doing some other stuff too. But anyway, clever stuff. She's got a lot of imagination. And I love a really good series that kind of explores a whole new way of looking at the world that we live in. I really like paranormal that reads like contemporary, but it's not. It's just off by this little bit, or by his off by this little bit.
Fresh.
Yeah, because it's but there's this world actually exists, kind of overlaying the world that we all see and experience.
Yeah. Her Donovans were actually, well, it was probably Silhouette back then, special editions, Captivated, Entranced, Charmed. Yes, and I loved those because
Special editions has always done some fun stuff.
Yeah, I still remember one of the heroes, that all the things he had to go through at the end, all the things that happened to him, and he kind of shows up and he's all beat up and everything, and the father's there is, what are you doing here? I'm here for your daughter. And they were Well, if he's put up with all this stuff and he still wants her, I guess he's good enough for her.
Those books bring me so far back. Wow. I
Oh,
used to
yeah.
devour Nora Roberts.
Sure. I
Yeah.
love that. Isn't that, it's fun to have a lifetime of reading in your brain.
Mhm.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, if you guys want to see, I don't know if you can see this, but
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh, look at
Oh, wow.
and that's just one of them. That was kind of my lifetime, and they've been sitting in totes and boxes in my
Yeah.
basement. My husband kept like, why are we keeping these? And then finally we got ourselves to the point where we could add on to the house. And I said, I want bookshelves. If we're adding onto the house, I really want bookshelves. And so finally, 30 years later, I got some bookshelves.
Yeah, my husband walked in my office with all my books and he looked around the other day and said, are you sure you're not a hoarder? I said, no, when it's books, you're not hoarding. No.
Oh,
When it's books, it's not hoarding.
It's not hoarding when it's books. Yeah.
It's a library.
One of
exactly.
the
Library.
one of the books that I was going to talk about, we had sort of, I don't know, we did this on the historical one, but it was, she's an indie author that Carol and I both know. It's called The Slaughtered
Oh, yeah.
Lamb Bookstore and Bar,
Shauna
Shauna Kelly. And Shauna was sort of came up with Carol and I, or Carrie and I, and we went through the Golden Heart.
Golden Heart with her. Yeah.
Heart
She was
in
Golden Heart,
2016. And she sold to Harlequin. And then Super Romance, and we're all so excited for her, you know, because we're all sort of just trying to get move forward in our chosen career. And then Super Romance closed. And I just remember feeling so awful for her that she'd finally got there, and her book was really considered to be a really good book. I haven't read that one. But, and then to see that she sort of moved on from that, and she created this series about Sam Quinn, and it's kind of like a Kim Harrison type book. There's a strong romantic arc in it. I wouldn't say it's the main arc, but yeah, I mean, in terms of just taking that indie step forward. And we were talking about Nalini Singh a lot and about world building. And she just did a podcast on the Spa Ladies. Did anybody hear that?
No.
And she was talking about it was about world building, but she was also talking about the creation of her, like you're talking about with your binder there.
Yeah.
Lucy, she has this incredibly built up binder, and she has an assistant who goes through and does puts it all together for every book. But
That's nice. Yeah.
If I have an assistant, maybe I have a binder too.
Yeah.
I was talking to my husband about printing things out, you know, for my own reference. And he's like, you have a computer, just have it on the computer. He's an IT guy.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm just like, so I was like, because I don't
not
really
the
have
same.
an office space.
Yeah,
It's not the same.
So
And
I
it's
will
not the
say,
same. I agree.
I will
think
say
I'm gonna
I do
start
it
there.
all entirely on the computer, but I don't do it in Word documents. I do it in OneNote, which is a Microsoft software, but it's like a binder. And what I love about that, like my entire life goes into OneNote, including my book Bibles and everything, but also like everything about my family goes in there, like everything goes in there. And what I love about it is that it's searchable. Which means that if I need to search any word or any scene or any character or anything like that, I can find every note I've ever taken on that particular thing. And I use it for like workshops. When we go to workshops at, you know, whatever conferences, I take all my notes in OneNote, which means my workshop notes are then searchable.
See,
and so
that's
I like
a good idea.
That's interesting because I've never figured out what to do with OneNote. I downloaded the software called Plotter, and all my series, all the characters are there, all the places are there, the notes that I want to take when I go back to the books, all that stuff is in that one spot. And then I am a plotter, so I can like knock out a synopsis real quick because I just put like my outline in there, and then I just go and then I build upon that. And so that's been helpful for me.
Does that cost money or?
Yeah,
it does. That one does cost money, and I bought
If I think I bought a lifetime thing.
That's what I got.
Like at on Black Friday or something.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they offered, you know, $99
look into that. That sounds really
lifetime or
helpful.
something. Yeah.
And
I
when
think that's
you're,
what I paid, Carrie, like $99 for the lifetime thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, that's not the
yeah.
one that has the different outlines where you could do like Save the Cat versus.
yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And
Yeah.
Jamie Gold beat
Yeah.
and all that.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's really cool. I will say on the OneNote, I mean, I think I love that your whole life and you've figured it out. I tried to use OneNote. I used to use, Microsoft had a thing called Notebook.
Yeah.
And you put everything together. But then when they switched Office, and I used to have all of my book information, everything in Notebook, but then they didn't, right, I lost it when they did an upgrade. And so I really struggle. That's why I do a lot of stuff I printed out, because then if that technology changes, or if I don't, it's like, you know how we buy all these ebooks, y'all, I had hundreds of ebooks I bought on the very first e-reading software for Microsoft that I lost because then they stopped doing it.
Wording it.
So
Yep.
technology changes, and it's just like, oh, so I like to have my
Physical copy too.
backup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to do one more comment, and then we're going to go around and everyone's going to talk about what's coming next, because we're actually at our hour almost.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh, wow.
really quick, Michelle Scott said, I'm a lifelong reader. I have no living room. It's a library. I love that about you. I have become a booksmith. I respine vintage books and make books now, all by hand. Books are the best, no matter the subject. Michelle, oh my
so
gosh,
cool.
I feel like I need to talk to you, because
I think
wanna
that's
write a
Marcia's
character that's-
daughter. I think
Okay.
that's Marcia Scott's daughter.
Oh,
I ask her if she's Marcia Scott's
Michelle,
daughter.
well, you ask her, because we're right here. Anyway, if you are Michelle, you and I need to chat, because I think it'd be really fun to write about a booksmith. By the way, I've thought about that. I read a book years ago where one of the characters was journeyman learning how to be a booksmith. And I thought, I want to write a
Really
character.
cool.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
really like this, you know,
Yeah.
because I'm totally identified with it. So maybe in my 60s, I'm going to become a booksmith. Who knows?
you know, when you talk about plotter and all of that, I buy all those things and I say, oh, I'm going to get organized and I'm going to do that.
Then-
And I never do. I write I like to call myself a quilter, because I just write a whole stack of scenes, and then it's like, okay, this one goes here, this one goes there, this one goes here.
Yeah, but that
And
quilt comes out beautiful.
Quilt it
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
I'm anything but organized.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so I am going to start. Carrie, you start. Say what's coming next, and then will you call on people, because I'm just answering.
Oh,
comments.
this is coming December 27th. It's up for pre-order.
Isn't
Hero
that a
His
cute
Dog.
cover, y'all?
It's a three-legged dog, and it's the hero, his leg was amputated below the knee, and the three-legged dog is there to teach him that life can go on and everything's fine. Because when I started out, I had all this whole different story. And when I filled out my art fact sheet, and my editor contacted me, she said, what happened to the search and rescue dogs and all this? I said, oh yeah, no, that all changed. So that's coming December 27th. And actually, from this story, I got a novella, I guess you would call it. It's 10,000 words. It's going to be online on the Harlequin website, 20 chapters, 1 chapter a day, from November 21st through December 18th. Because in the book, the little girl said to the hero, he talked about his mother, and she said, oh, is your mother old? He said, well, she's about the age of your grandfather. And the light bulb went off, because those two are single. So it's an over 50. It's called Finding Forever After 50. It's going to be on the website.
Okay, Abigail, how about you next?
Sure. So I just had to come out. So this one actually just came out in September. And then Carrie's got my How a Snowball Snow
Yeah,
Course.
this one.
Yeah. That one just came out also in September, basically, or maybe it was August and September. It all blurs together at this point. So the sequel to this one comes out in May and is up for pre-order now. And the next kitten book comes out next Christmas.
Yeah, they all seem to be Christmas kittens.
Yeah, they're all Christmas kittens. Yep.
Aren't they the ones that you said during COVID, your kitten was angry with your editor?
My character, I wrote the first book in COVID and went out to my beta readers, and they all came back and they were like, well, the story's great, but your heroine seems really angry. And I was like, I think my COVID like got into my book.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Anne, what's up next for you?
Actually in December, I do have 2 books releasing. I don't really have the hard copy in front of me. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yep.
Dangerous
Ooh, that's
Entanglements.
Ooh, ooh,
It's going to
okay.
be a collection with several authors, 5 of us, I think, Nicole Morgan, and me and some others. And I'm really excited about it. That's the romantic suspense. It comes out in December. And then also in December, I'm in a collection of short stories by a list of authors, Christmas anthology.
Fun.
And so that'll be a lot of fun too. My story, I think, is right around 14,000 words. Just a fun, steamy contemporary kind of story. So I'm looking forward to both of those. Then, of course, next year is going to be the next book in my Cenarian series, and I got to get busy.
Yeah.
I'm falling behind.
Synithia, how about you?
So, Spirit of Second Chances just came out August, I believe it was. And then the next book, Counterfeit Courtship,
I like that.
will be in November, and that's the next book in Heart and Soul. So you get all 3 brothers. The kind of over arc of the series is they started off with paranormal as a side hustle, and in book 3 they're full-fledged, got a reality TV show about their paranormal investigations.
You had me with Paranormal Brothers. I was like, done, sold, go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Taro's the messy one, so he's a messy brother. So his story is like that. And then next summer, the first book in my new series with HQN, which is now Canary Street Press, but that'll be out in August, and it's a contemporary small town romance. No ghosts in that one though.
Sounds good though. Yeah. I like it. Okay, Madalyn. Also, if you could tell us what's coming next, and do you have a website? Because I tried to find a website for that.
I don't.
Name. Okay.
So, so Madalyn Layne is just coming out. This is First Kiss is the first book in the new series called Wolves Bowden. So last night, I'm a indie publishing this series. I just put it up on Amazon last night, and I checked this morning, and I have an actual author page. Not the Author Central page, but I've got it up on Amazon, and that was pretty exciting to see it up there.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's on pre-order right now, and that'll come out November 10th is my date. And I still have to create Madalyn Layne. So I've opened, some of the social media sites. Not that I have anything on there, but I've got those opened up. I still have to create my website, and I still have to create, newsletter and get that all into place. So technically I'm doing a lot of little things that aren't writing things, but creating that pen name.
Yeah.
And then I think what I'm going to do after that is I want to write a novella that's a prequel novella for the series to get people into the series, as well as my other pen name with my historicals. I have a book due for that I'm working on called The Laird's Hellion right now.
Love that title.
Yeah.
To be honest, love that title. That's so great. Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you everyone who showed up to watch us live and who is watching us later on the video on YouTube. And you all are great. This was just fun. The time flew by. Thank you so much. It was
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yes.
It was good.
Everybody.
I am going to take us off of live. So give me a second. One,
everybody.
2, 3. And live stream. We are